Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're taking a closer look at Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition leader.
A fascinating figure, to say the least.
Absolutely. And to guide us through his world, we've got his autobiography, Patriot. Have you had a chance to look through it?
I have, yeah, it's really something else. Not your typical political memoir.
It's very personal, right?
Very much so. It almost feels like you're having a conversation with him, hearing his story straight from the source.
Which is what makes it so valuable, I think. You get this unfiltered look into his life, his experiences, his motivations.
Exactly. It's raw, honest, and often quite funny, despite some of the difficult topics he covers.
Well, let's dive into those topics then, shall we? His childhood is particularly interesting. He grew up in these military settlements, which sound like a completely different world.
They were. Everything revolved around the military, structure, hierarchy. Life was dictated by numbers, quite literally.
Yeah, numbers.
Yeah, your apartment number, your parents' work schedule, everything was assigned a number, a place within this rigid system.
Wow, that's a far cry from how most of us grew up.
It is, and you can see how that environment, that constant exposure to authority and control, shaped his early worldview.
You can almost draw a line from those early experiences to his later activism, his fight against corruption and injustice.
Absolutely. He saw firsthand how systems can be manipulated, how power can be abused, and those experiences stayed with him.
But amidst all that, he also talks about these moments of childhood mischief, these glimmers of rebellion, like the story about him and his friends fishing for bullets.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic Navalny anecdote. It perfectly captures the absurdity of the situation.
I have to admit, when I first read that, I was like, wait, what? Fishing for bullets?
It sounds crazy, right? But that was their reality. These kids would go to a nearby field where soldiers had been training and use magnets to pull bullets out of the dirt.
So their playground was basically a live fire range.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a chilling image when you think about it, but it also speaks to their resourcefulness, their ability to find a bit of fun and adventure in the midst of this highly controlled environment.
It's like a microcosm of his later approach to challenging the system, finding creative ways to push back, to subvert expectations.
Exactly. And it wasn't just the physical environment. He also talks about the influence of Western music, how access to forbidden rock and pop became this form of rebellion.
Right, I remember reading about that. This was the era of smuggled cassette tapes, shared among friends like precious contraband.
Exactly. Imagine in this world of strict censorship and propaganda, suddenly hearing these different voices, these different perspectives.
It's like a window into a different world, a different way of thinking.
It was, and it had a profound impact on him. He started to question the narratives he was being fed, to see the cracks in the system.
So it's this combination of factors, right? The rigid control, the exposure to different ideas, the sense that things weren't quite right.
It all contributed to his growing disillusionment with the Soviet system. And then, of course, came Chernobyl.
Which was a turning point for many people, I think. The moment when the cracks in the system became impossible to ignore.
For Navalny, it was a moment of betrayal. He saw the government downplaying the severity of the disaster, manipulating information, putting people at risk.
It was a wake-up call, wasn't it? A realization that the system wasn't just flawed, it was fundamentally broken.
Exactly. And that realization would shape his path going forward.
It's like this disillusionment fuels his activism, right? It becomes this driving force, pushing him to challenge the status quo.
Absolutely. And you start to see this shift in his focus from just observing and critiquing to actually taking action.
So how does that manifest? How does he go from being this frustrated observer to a leading voice for change?
Well, he starts by using the tools available to him, which in the early 2000s meant blogging.
Ah, yes, the early days of the internet. This was before Facebook, Twitter, the social media landscape we're used to today.
Exactly. And Navalny was really one of the pioneers of online activism in Russia. He starts blogging on LiveJournal, which was a popular platform at the time.
And what's he writing about?
Corruption, mainly. He starts exposing shady dealings within state-owned companies like Gazprom. Imagine taking on these massive, powerful entities armed with nothing but a laptop and an internet connection.
It's a pretty bold move, especially in Russia, where freedom of speech isn't exactly a given.
It was, and it's remarkable how quickly he gains traction. People are drawn to his honesty, his willingness to call out those in power.
And his ability to explain complex issues in a way that's easy to understand. He doesn't get bogged down in jargon or technicalities. He makes it relatable.
Yeah, he's got this knack for cutting through the noise and getting to the heart of the matter, and that's what makes him so dangerous to those in power. He's able to connect with people on a visceral level to make them see the injustice of the system.
But he doesn't stop with blogging, right? He takes his activism a step further by becoming a minority shareholder in these very companies he's criticizing.
Right. This is where his legal background comes into play.
Yeah.
He understands the system, the loopholes, the ways to use the rules to his advantage.
So he's basically gaming the system.
You could say that by becoming a shareholder, even a small one. He gains certain rights.
Like the right to attend shareholder meetings and speak directly to company leadership.
Exactly. He uses these meetings as a platform to expose corruption, to challenge executives, to demand accountability.
I can imagine the scene. You've got these powerful CEOs, these oligarchs, used to operating in secrecy, and suddenly they've got this guy, Nawalny, standing up in their meetings, quoting financial statements, exposing their shady dealings.
Oh yeah, it must have been infuriating for them. He was a thorn in their side, constantly poking and prodding, refusing to let them get away with their corrupt practices.
So he's not just some blogger anymore. He's a real threat to their power and their wealth.
Right, and it's incredibly effective. His profile continues to rise, and he starts to gain a national following. People are inspired by his courage, his tenacity.
He becomes this symbol of resistance, a beacon of hope for those who are fed up with the corruption and the injustice.
Exactly. But as his profile rises, so too does the pushback from the authorities.
He faces harassment, intimidation, even physical violence.
It's the price he pays for speaking truth to power.
And ultimately, it leads to his imprisonment, right? He spends a significant amount of time behind bars on various charges, most of which are widely seen as politically motivated.
Yeah, it's clear that the authorities see him as a threat, and they're willing to use any means necessary to silence him.
But it doesn't work, does it? He keeps coming back, stronger each time. Even from prison, he finds ways to continue his work.
His resilience is remarkable. He seems to thrive on adversity.
It's like the more they try to suppress him, the more determined he becomes.
It's almost as if he's drawing strength from the opposition, from the very forces that are trying to silence him.
And then there's the poisoning, the attempted assassination. It's almost unbelievable that he survived.
It is, and it speaks to the lengths that those in power are willing to go to in order to eliminate their opponents.
And yet he returns to Russia knowing full well the risks he's facing.
It's an act of defiance, of unwavering commitment to his cause. He's not going to be intimidated. He's not going to back down.
But it's not just about politics with Nawalny, is it? He's also a husband, a father, a human being going through this extraordinary ordeal.
Right. And his memoir does a great job of humanizing him. We see the toll that his activism takes on his family, the sacrifices they've all made.
Especially his wife, Yulia. She's been such a steadfast supporter throughout his ordeals. How does he describe their relationship?
Well, he talks about their early days, how they met, how they fell in love. It wasn't some grand, sweeping romance. It was more of a slow burn, a growing appreciation for each other's intelligence, sense of humor, shared values.
So it's a real partnership built on mutual respect and understanding.
Exactly. And that foundation is what allows them to weather the storms, the constant surveillance, the threats, the imprisonment. It's clear that their love for each other is a source of strength for both of them.
And it's not just his family, right? Nawalny also finds solace in his faith, which might surprise some people.
It did surprise me a bit, I have to admit. You don't always associate political activism with religious faith, especially in someone like Nawalny who's so focused on challenging the system.
But he talks about finding comfort in the Bible, particularly the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah, he really connects with those teachings, the messages of hope, resilience, standing up for what you believe in, even when it's difficult.
It's like he finds parallels between those teachings and his own struggle, his own fight for justice.
I think that's a great point. It's about finding strength in something bigger than yourself, something that transcends the political battles, the personal struggles.
And it gives him the strength to keep going, even when the odds seem insurmountable.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that hope endures, even in the darkest of times.
It's a powerful message and one that resonates far beyond the borders of Russia.
I think that's what makes the Navalny story so compelling. It's not just about Russia. It's about the universal struggle for justice, for freedom, for a better world.
It's a story that speaks to something deep within us, that desire for change, for something more.
And it reminds us that even one person can make a difference.
You know, it's been quite a journey. going through his life, his experiences, his motivations, what do you think is the lasting impact of his work? How will he be remembered?
That's a tough question. It's still early to say, really. His story is still being written.
True. But even now, you can see the impact he's had. He's inspired a generation of Russians, given them a voice, shown them that it's possible to challenge the system.
He's also exposed the corruption at the heart of the Russian government, revealed the mechanisms of power, the ways in which the system is rigged against ordinary people.
And he's done it all with wit, with humor, with a deep understanding of how to use media to his advantage.
Right, he's not just a political figure. He's a master communicator. He knows how to connect with people, how to make his message resonate.
So it's not just about what he says, it's about how he says it. He's a storyteller, and a damn good one at that.
I think you're right. He's able to weave these personal narratives, these anecdotes, into his political message. And that's what makes it so powerful.
It's not just dry facts and figures, it's about real people, real lives, real struggles. And that's what makes it relatable, what makes it resonate.
It's what makes him human, and that's ultimately what makes him so effective.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what do you think is the key takeaway for our listeners? What can we learn from Navalny's story?
Well, for me, it's about the power of courage, the importance of speaking truth to power, even when it's dangerous.
It's about standing up for what you believe in, even when the odds are stacked against you.
And it's about the importance of hope. Even in the darkest of times, hope endures, and it can inspire us to fight for a better world.
It's a powerful message and one that we should all take to heart. So, to our listeners, wherever you are in the world, keep questioning, keep challenging, keep fighting for what you believe in, and never give up hope. Until next time on The Deep Dive, keep exploring and stay curious.